Hello, in this webinar, part of the UniSim Design Technical webinar series by the UniSim Design Technical Support Team, I'm going to describe some useful tips and tricks for UniSim Design. These illustrate some of the usability features that UniSim Design has. Some are small, some are more significant. Hopefully there'll be something for everyone. So in this session, I'm going to cover various tips and tricks topics. So starting with model navigation, ways to find things within the simulation case. Looking at notes and descriptions, so notes on objects, descriptions on objects, a way that you can make UniSim Design automatically note down when you make a change in specifications. Working more with the PFD, so particularly looking at changing the label variables from names into something else. F2 to edit, so various new ways that the F2 key can edit things, and a way of finding text on the PFD also. Different ways of working with the object property views or windows, as people may know them. Again, F2, some things you can do with right clicking, and the tooltips that show when you hover over a value. This leads into the preferences, because that's how we can control the tooltips and also the variables that UniSim Design is using in general. A new trick where we can type to jump to something in a long list where we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And finally, looking at spreadsheets, which have seen lots of improvements, now much more Excel-like, with things like range formula, like a sum, adding and deleting rows and columns, easy copy pasting with absolute references with dollar signs and so on, and a trick about importing compositions easily into the spreadsheet. Let's look at model navigation. This is especially important if the model you're working with is large or it's made by somebody else. So UniSim Design has a number of options that you can use to navigate around within your model. I'm going to give an overview of them here, and then I'm going to give a demo in UniSim Design. So first of all, we have a way of searching within a given flow sheet for a particular object. This uses one of the PFD right-click background options called Select Objects. So by using this, we have a list. We can type and search within the list to find the object name that we would like, and then we're able to quickly locate that on the flow sheet, and then we can start to work with it. Next, UniSim Design has a tool called the Simulation Navigator. This presents us with the list of all the objects within our model, and we can filter that list in different ways. We can locate the object we're looking to find, and then on the right hand side of the navigator, it shows us the property view for that object. We have a way to quickly locate it also within the flow sheet where it's sitting. Finally, the tool we'll look at here is the Object Navigator. This has a similar kind of structure where we can see the flow sheets within our model, and then the objects that sit within that selected flow sheet. We can filter the list we're seeing if we only want streams or unit operations or particular kinds of unit operations. We can customize the list. But importantly, we have a way here to search for things by name. So we can search, if we know the name of the object we like, we can search anywhere within the model and locate that, and then quickly open up the PFD where that object is sitting and view the property view for that object as well. So let's switch to UniSim Design and we can test out some of those things. So I'm using the latest version of UniSim Design, which is R480, and I have the new home page showing. If you don't see this, you can get it by making sure the controls are installed from the installation files, and then use the key wheel icon at the top right hand corner to make it show. So I'm going to load up a test model. I have an example here. It's a relatively large model, multiple flow sheets. You can see on the main flow sheet we see some streams and then various sub flow sheets. It has multiple layers of flow sheets and as I say, quite large. So it's a useful one to demonstrate this. So first of all, if we want to go into one of the flow sheets, we can right click and open up that PFD. Then that PFD opens and we can see all the objects there, of course. Now I'm going to first show the select objects thing I mentioned just now. So I can right click on the background, choose the select objects setting there, and then a new window appears showing me all the objects on this flow sheet. Now the key here, if we want to find something by name, is we can start to type it. So let's say I know that the name of the object I require is called K100. I can start to type that, and there it appears in the list. Now if I press OK, UniSim Design will select that and highlight it, and it will make it flash. You see it was flashing there. If I now press the home key, it will zoom to show the selected object. So we can repeat that, but what happens if we choose something which is not currently visible on the screen? How do we see it then? Well, we don't see it flashing because it's not in the current piece of the flowsheet I'm looking at, but still if I press home, then it will jump to show that particular object, and I can do whatever I need to do with it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is the simulation navigator. So this is accessible from the main button bar here, the kind of tree structure icon. We press that button and the simulation navigator opens. So in the simulation navigator we can see a list of all the objects in the case, so across all of the flow sheets in the case. So we can choose to filter and group the objects using this control here. So at the moment they're being grouped by their status, so OK, error and so on. In fact, in this model everything is solved, so they all show under OK. We can also choose to group by object, and so you can see all the streams show in this category and so on, or we can also group by flow sheet. Importantly here we can see some of them have this @ sign with their object name, and that means they're on a different sub flow sheet. They're not on the main flow sheet. If we were to scroll down and we see some of them don't have an @ sign, then those are the ones that are on the main flow sheet. So this one would be a main flow sheet stream. So any of the streams or objects we click on, we can see its property view showing over here on the right hand side. And if we choose this button here, what happens is that it will open up the flow sheet where that object is sitting and select it. So it takes us straight to the object we're wanting to work with. It's zoomed in a bit, but we can zoom out. So here I'm using the page up and page down, or I can use the scrolling wheel, or I can press home to show everything, or I can also use this button to show everything as well. So I can quickly get a view where my object is within the flow sheet where it's sitting. So finally I'm going to work with the object navigator, which I can access by this button up here on the button bar. So this is a similar kind of idea. It has the flow sheets this time listed on the left hand side, and by selecting one of the flow sheets in the list, it shows us the objects on that flow sheet in the right hand list. By default it shows everything, but we can also filter this right hand list. So if we're only interested in the streams on a given flow sheet, we can filter in that way. So we can quickly click through the list and see the objects that sit there. We can use here the indentation to give us an idea of the flow sheet structure. So these are the top level flow sheets sitting under the main flow sheet. Gas plant 1 has some sub flow sheets within that, and so on. Then there's another layer here down to the turbo expander flow sheet, and within there's a column. So by looking at the indentation, we can get an idea of the levels within the model. So as I mentioned, this is quite a complicated model with several layers of flow sheet. So for any of the objects that we find in the list, if we select it, we can either press the view button and it will bring up the window or the property view for that object, or we can use the find in PFD button, and it, as before, goes straight to the PFD, selects it and zooms in so we can locate it. Actually, we can use a further trick here. If we do have the property view showing for a given object, so we can select and hit view as before. Another trick is if we just quickly right click up here on the title bar of this window, then we can use the find in PFD option, and it does the same thing. It opens up the PFD and zooms in to show us that particular object. Now, one of the most useful features of the object navigator is we can search by name, and that's what happens up here in this top box. If we were to type something here, it will filter the list to show that particular object. Now, the best way of working here is, I think, to go to the main flow sheet and then to activate this checkbox here, include sub flow sheet. So this means that what we now see is everything in the main flow sheet in this case, plus all the objects in the flow sheet underneath that. So if we're searching for a particular object, this makes sense because then it will search everywhere within the model. So let's suppose we're working in an unfamiliar model. Someone has told us the name of an object that we want to locate, but we don't know where it is. So we can use this method to do that. So if we know the name of the object, and you can see here when I hover over, it's given me some clues about how I can search. You can use wildcards in the standard kind of way. So we know the name, and we're going to search for that. So let's suppose we go again with a compressor. So we know the name of the compressor is K dash, and then now what's happened is it's filtered the list to show everything that meets that K dash object name. It's got a kind of an implicit wildcard there as an asterisk, so we don't always need to type the asterisk. If we start to type a bit further, so now we know that the air compressor is called K200, then it filters the list down much more, and there's actually two compressors that match that string there. If we select one of them, we can then either press view or find in PFD as before, and it will take us straight in to that compressor. So a quick way of locating an object if you know the name but you don't know whereabouts in the model it is. So it's taken us straight there to our compressor K200A. Now let's look at working with object notes and descriptions. All the object types in UniSim Design have a place where you can write notes on them. So for example, here's the simulation main properties. There's a notes tab there where you can write your note. Here's a material stream on the worksheet tab, and then the notes page. You can write your note there. And similarly for unit operations, they have a notes page on the design tab. But it would be quite painful if we had to go through all of the objects one by one in order to find the ones that had notes written on them. So in order to avoid that, we have a tool called the Notes Manager. We can get to this from the flowsheet menu, and it basically gives us a view of the objects within the simulation, but only the ones that have notes. We have a checkbox where we can set that, and it filters our view to show only the objects with notes. So very quickly we can find out where the notes are in the case where we've written them in the past or someone else has written them, if it's a model that we haven't developed ourselves. So importantly as well, in this Notes Manager, we have a way where we can get UniSim Design to automatically write notes about any specification changes that have been made by the user. So this checkbox here lets us switch that on, and you can see an example here in this stream called feed2, where it's noting down that the user has made specification changes. Related to notes are object descriptions. So we can set these also on the notes page, but importantly these we can get UniSim Design to show on the PFD as well. So in the screenshots here I show some objects that have notes, and I've changed the PFD, instead of showing the names, to show the descriptions of those objects. So there's a special shortcut I can use on the PFD called Shift and R. So let's switch back to our demo model and look at notes and descriptions. So I already know that in this model there is a note on this feed1 stream. So I can open up the feed1 stream, go to the worksheet tab, notes page, and I see my note there. So if I was to put something extra into this note, so note for feed1, changed note, I can just type, and we see that UniSim Design updates this kind of extra comment on the note to tell us who changed the note and when they did it. So here user is my Windows username. The notes are rich text, so I can change the formatting as I like, put different colors and all kinds of things like that. So that's setting the note on an individual stream, but as we said, it would be a pain if we had to go and locate them all manually. So we can use on the flowsheet menu the Notes Manager, and the Notes Manager is set up to quickly show us all of the notes on the objects within the case. So here they are. This is the tree of the objects, and it's set to only show the ones with notes. If we go to feed1, we can see there is the note that I just changed with the rich text and again the tag. So any other objects that have notes we can quickly locate in the tree and see them. We can edit them here if we like. We can also do some searching within those notes using text strings, and we can use a date filter as well if we want to only show notes after a certain date range. So those are the notes, the object notes. If we come down here into this section, we can turn on the automatic logging as a note of any specification changes. So if we activate that option, then now whenever I make a change in a specification, it will automatically show up in this notes manager. So let's go and find one of the feed streams to my model. I'm just going to quickly move that to the back. Keep an eye on the notes manager. So here we're going to be working in feed 3. Let's change the temperature. So now feed 3 appears in the notes manager, and it has a note that shows the specification change. So it takes this form, a user spec note. It tells me the new temperature, the old temperature, who made the change, and what time they did it. If we make another couple of changes as well, let's set a new pressure. That also gets noted down in the notes. If we want to just view only the specification changes, there's a button we can press, and then it brings up a view of only the specification changes there. So that's the notes manager and the automatic noting of specification changes. Within the notes manager as well, we see this description field, and that's what I want to come on to next. So the description field shows in the notes manager, but it will also show in the individual objects as well. If we have found an interesting note and we'd like to locate the object within the flow sheet, then we can press this view selected objects button. So let's suppose we go and find our compressor down here under rotating equipment. This is the one we were locating earlier, so we kind of know where it is, but we can go straight to it by pressing the view selected object button. It opens up the property view for the compressor, and we know that if we right click in the title bar, we can go and locate that in the PFD. So this compressor has a note entered, and it also has a description down at the bottom. So the description is not, you can't write as much text, it's not rich text, it has no formatting. But importantly, we can use a trick on the PFD to show the description instead of the object names. So at the moment we're showing object names. We can use a special key combination, a shift plus a key combination. So if we press shift and R, what happens is the object names on the PFD change so that they're showing the descriptions now. So here for our compressor, we can see it shows us PFD K100A/B, and that is indeed the description entered on the notes page. So we notice lots of the other objects show with some square brackets. So the intent of the square brackets is to show that these objects don't have a description entered. So actually it's still showing their standard name. If we're to press on the keyboard Shift and N, then we switch back to showing the object names. So you can see, for example, this feed stream third stage SEPVAP. We can tell when we press Shift and R that doesn't have a description entered because it still shows the object name, but it puts the square brackets around it. Whereas for our compressor, we see the description and those square brackets showing. So this has various uses. If you just need to write an extra note about an object, but you want to see it on the PFD, you can use it for that. So people often might use it for writing the PFD tag or the PNID tag of a given object and having a way to toggle between the kind of simulation object name and then the PFD or PNID name of that particular object. In both of the previous demos, we've already seen some PFD shortcuts. In this section, I'm going to show some more tips and tricks that we can use on the PFD. We saw previously that we could use Shift and R to show the object descriptions instead of their names as the PFD label. In fact, there's a whole set of other shortcuts we can use, and there's a place that we can go and look them up in the Help menu. As well as that, we can actually choose any label variable we like, not just from the shortcuts, but any one we like from a list of all the possible variables. So I will demonstrate that. Particularly interesting here is the Shift and C combination, because this lets us see streams with specified composition. I will also show how we can use the F2 key as a shortcut in order to change the name and the description of objects on the PFD. And we can see some other uses of F2 as well for editing a specification in a cell and doing what we call an ad hoc unit conversion. So for any calculated value, we can also use F2 to see the value in another unit. I'll also show the Find Text or Label feature of the PFD. So we can trigger this from the PFD button bar, the binoculars icon, and it gives us the ability to search for text on a given PFD or on all PFDs in the case. So we can search either in the labels of the objects, so the object names, or any text annotations or labels we've written onto the PFD itself. Let's return to our demo model and we'll go into this separation subflow sheet that we've been looking in before, and we'll start to look at the PFD label variables. So we've already seen the Shift and R shortcut, which will show us the descriptions. There's some other Shift and something combinations. So for example, Shift and T, if I press on my keyboard, shows me the temperatures instead of the stream names. Shift and P shows me pressures. Shift and F shows me mole flows. Shift and M shows me mass flows. If we're not sure of any of those combinations, or we want to see all the possibilities, we can come to the Help menu and then we can choose Hotkey List. A window appears with all of the hotkeys, not just for the PFD. So to look at the PFD hotkeys, we choose PFD in the left-hand menu, and then we can see lots of other hotkeys as well. But we have a whole set of Shift and something combinations. So I've shown some of the more common ones there. There's some particularly interesting ones for dynamics to do with nozzle elevations, the downstream pressure, static head contribution, and so on. So we can come out of there. Before we move away from the Shift and something combinations, there's two further things to note. If we press Shift and T, then we can see that some of the streams show with an asterisk and some of them don't. The same thing would be for Shift and P. So some show with an asterisk and some of them don't. So the point of the asterisk is it's indicating that this value is a specification, whereas the no asterisk value is a calculated value. So for example, in this stream, if we open it up, we can see there's a specified pressure. In the upstream stream, we see that the pressure is a calculated value. In fact, it's calculated because this stream is connected to the stream on the main flow sheet feeding into this subflow sheet. So asterisk means a specification. So something interesting here, if we just toggle back to the names of the streams, and then we press Shift and C. So the Shift and C shortcut is indicating streams with a specified composition. So we see that this cooling water stream coming to the heat exchanger shows with an asterisk. The recycle outlet stream shows with an asterisk because that's how the recycle sets the composition in the outlet stream. So the asterisk here is indicating a stream with a specified composition, and no asterisk on the stream name is one where the composition is calculated. So we can just double click on this cooling water stream to confirm that. Indeed, the compositions show blue. Any of the streams without an asterisk, the compositions will show black. So let's just press Shift and C again to come back to the normal stream names. So if we want a variable that isn't one of the shortcut key combinations, we can still use that. We can pick any variable we like to show instead of the PFD names. So if we right click on the background, this time we need to pick the choose label variable option there. On the window that appears, we can toggle between names and values, and we can choose to show and hide the units, but importantly we can pick the change variable button. A new list appears with all the possible variables, and we can pick anything out of the list here. If you can't see directly the one you want to pick, but you know its name, you can start to type. So if we start to type, for example, mass, it's jumped to mass density there, and that's the one I want, so I can press OK. And now I see the mass density showing instead of the stream names. Okay, so we'll just come out of that, and now we've got back to the names showing. So on the subject of names, we can use another shortcut key, which is the F2 key. So if I select one of the streams here and I press the F2 key, a small window appears, and now I can change the name into a new name, and I can also set the description directly. So this is meant to be a kind of a quicker way of doing it than going into the full property view for the stream. We just get the information we need, so we can put the new stream there. Let's just append a little extra tag, and we can put a description as well in that box too. So a quick way of setting the name and the description. F2 works in other places as well. So if we go to a stream where there's a specification, we see that we can use the F2 key in order to edit the specification. So we know that this cooling water stream has a specification from before. In fact, it has specified temperature and pressure. If I go to the specified temperature and I press F2, then what happens is a small editing window appears, and I can edit the already entered temperature. I can also choose a unit type. So if I wanted to enter in a different unit, I could pick in there the unit I would like, and it would use that instead of the current display unit, which is centigrade. Instead of pressing F2, actually, if I click on this small bar on the left-hand side, I get the same effect. I can edit and choose the units there. So that's another use for the F2 key. F2 also works on the calculated values as well. So obviously I can't change the calculated values as such, but if I press F2, or equivalently I kind of click where the little bar would be from before. So let's press F2 in this case. So F2 lets me change the unit. So it's not the kind of a permanent change to the units. That's controlled by their preferences. It's what we call an ad hoc change to the unit. So if I have my mass flow in kilograms an hour, but I would just need this value in a different unit. So let's suppose I want to get a pounds per hour mass flow there, or any of the other units. I can select the unit I would like, pounds per hour. You see the value changes. The important thing is that it's a selectable value, so I could select it and use Control C, and I would copy that, and then I can paste that anywhere I like. So that's the ad hoc unit conversion. So returning to the main flowsheet, let's look at the Find Text or Label button on the PFD button bar, so the button with the binoculars icon. So I can press that. Apparently nothing has happened here, but actually what's happened over on the top right hand corner is we see the Find in PFD window has appeared. So here I can set some text I'd like to search for. I can search either in the annotations, so the labels added to the PFD, or the object labels. I can choose to match the case exactly or not, and I can choose whether to search in a given flow sheet or in all the flow sheets or all the PFDs in the model. So I know that in this model, another engineer called AB has made some comments by adding labels to the flow sheet, and they've included their initials in those comments. So if I type AB there, choose text annotations, I don't worry about the case, and choose to search in all the PFDs. So if I press the Find First button, it will take me to the first comment that AB has added. So it's opened up the flow sheet where that comment is sitting and has zoomed and selected the label. If I need to zoom out to see what's going on, I can use the scroll wheel or any of the other zooming methods. Okay, so AB says we need to add some further changes onto that one. Let's see what the next comment they've made. We'll go over to Find Next, and there's another one. This time AB has said we need 2 compressors in parallel. Okay, so again, we can zoom out a bit, and we see we have a single compressor here with its air cooler. Let's help AB out in this instance. So let's make a bit of space. We want to add a new parallel compressor and an air cooler as well. So I'm going to use the auto attach mode here. So normally auto attach mode, you may have already used it when you're building up the flow sheet. So let's open up the object palette and just build another small piece of model just to illustrate that. So first of all, I add my new stream as normal, but I've got my auto attach mode active. If I choose another unit operation, it automatically connects it onto the stream which is selected at the moment. It moves the selection onto the vapor product. So if I add something else now, it will connect onto there and so on. So that's auto attach mode normally, but we can also use auto attach mode for some existing unit operations and add in things, add in the new unit operation with auto attach mode. So we don't need this part. We're just going to delete that, select it all, hit the delete key and OK that. So I'm going to add in a T here upstream of the compressor. So I can select my compressor. I'm still in auto attach mode. choose to add my T, insert it in upstream. It's recognized that there's already a connection there, so it says, what do you want to do? So I want to have my new T is going to be downstream of sweet gas, and I'm going to OK that. Okay, so it's added in my new T. I just need to break the existing connection, and then I can have my T, and I'm going to reconnect stream 2 back into the compressor. So now, rather than rebuilding the compressor, I'm going to actually copy the existing one. So I'm going to select all the unit operations and streams I would like. So I've got the first one. I use Shift and click for the second, and then again Shift and click on the air cooler and the air cooler's energy stream. So I've got everything selected that I want to copy. So I can right click there, choose cut paste, and then copy the objects. So it's telling me that I haven't got all of the connected streams. So actually, because I've missed stream 2, that's why it's giving me this message. I don't need to copy stream 2 because I already have another feed stream there. So I'm going to say no to that message. So when I'm ready, I can right click again on the PFD background and choose cut paste again, and then paste objects. So when I do this, I see a kind of a ghost of the objects which I'm going to place down. So anywhere I would like, although it won't let me overlap, of course, so you can see it's put crosses to show I can't do that. If I come somewhere where they're able to go, I'm happy with that. I click again, and then the objects, the pasted objects appear there. So now I can use normal attach mode to connect those in. So I'm going to connect in stream 3 into the compressor as the feed stream. So I use normal attach mode with the control key and connect into the compressor feed stream there. Comp gas is going to be the overall outlet, so I need to right click here and break. I need to add in my mixer. This time I've not got auto attach, I'm just in normal mode. Hold down the control key again and use attach mode to connect up to the mixer and then off onto comp gas. So that's a kind of a combination of the searching with the find text or label, and then auto attach mode and copy pasting. Let's look at the object property view. So first of all, what is the object property view? Well, most people would probably actually call it the stream window or the unit operation window. We've seen F2 before for changing the units temporarily. We've seen some right click options before, but there's some more. There is a page that shows us the attachments, both upstream, downstream and logical connections. And also we'll start to look at the tooltips and what they are and how we can change what they display, and also how we can see that they tell us useful information. If we right click in the title bar of a stream or unit operation window, then this menu appears. We can do various things. We've seen already locating the object on the PFD using find in PFD. There's also a useful window of connections, and also open page is useful as well. This lets us open up a separate window showing the currently visible page. This is the attachments tab and unit operations page of a stream, and this gives us some useful information about what's connected upstream and downstream and via a logical connection. So typically that would be a spreadsheet, but it might also be an adjust or a set. In this case, the stream is showing us there's a balance connected. We can also use the left and right pointing arrows to move to the upstream or downstream object. Tooltips are the small yellow panels that appear when you put the mouse pointer over a value. They show three important pieces of information. First of all, they show the variable in different units, and you can configure which units they are in the preferences. Then they tell you the variable type. Now this is particularly useful if you're looking to change the preferences, to change the units that UniSim Design is using to show those particular variables. Sometimes you see variable type, sometimes you see variable type as well as display units, and this is because the internal type name that UniSim Design is using, so the variable type is different from the unit type you need to find in the preferences in order to change it. So I'll demonstrate that in a minute so it's clearer. And also for the conditions page of streams and unit operations, then you see the calculated by being displayed as well. So this is useful because it tells you which object is calculating that value. So in the small screenshot here, we can see that in this case for a stream, the molar flow is being calculated by feed1, and actually feed1 was the name of this stream. Let's open up one of the streams in our separation subflow sheet in our demo model. So this is the stream fuel gas 1, and this is the object property view, or stream window as you might call it, for this stream. So several things to look at. So if we right click up here in the title bar, we can see the context menu that appears. We've already seen find in PFD being used before. It zooms and highlights the stream there. Another useful thing we can do up here as well is to open the page. So if we choose to open the page, then we see another window appears with the currently open page, but what it means is we can go to a different page in the stream, so we can see the properties page as well as the conditions page, so that's also useful. If we turn to the attachments tab, then we can see for our stream in the middle, so fuel gas 1 upstream, there is a T, and indeed if we look in the flow sheet we can find that it's just down there, RT. Downstream we can see that we have another stream, fuel gas 1, and it's on the main flow sheet. So it's a materials stream and it's called fuel gas 1. It's on the main flow sheet because we can see it's got the at main there, which is the tag of the main flow sheet. So any of the things that are displayed here, if we double click on them, then the window for that stream opens, and indeed we can also do the right click again, find in PFD for that stream as well, and we can see that this is the connected stream on the main flow sheet, where our fuel gas stream, which has disappeared, connects to. So it goes from the subflow sheet to the main flow sheet, and we can see that the attachments tab is showing us that. Interestingly as well, we see some logical operations. In this case, there are two logical operations listed, and they're a spreadsheet. So it's telling us the cell B1 and B6 of a spreadsheet it's being connected as a logical operation to this stream. Again, if we double click there, we can open up that spreadsheet, and we can use the same trick as well. We can do right click, find in PFD to locate that. So actually it's a spreadsheet in the same subflow sheet, and it's obviously doing some calculations. I cover spreadsheets later on in this webinar. We can see a similar thing, but just for the connections, if we right click and choose connections. So either by looking in the attachments tab, we can see the logical connections. We can also see it by this logical connections window, which we got by right clicking and choosing connections. So let's turn back to the worksheet tab and the conditions page, and let's look at the tooltips. So if I hover over the pressure, I can see the tooltip appears, and it tells me the pressure in some different units. In fact, it's telling me the pressure in SI, EuroSI, and field units. It says the variable type is pressure, and that the pressure is calculated by T100, which is the upstream T. Now, let's customize that tooltip. So we'll come to the Tools menu, the Preferences option. We need the Simulation tab and the Tooltips page. Now I've got it set at the defaults, so it's using the default unit set for the tooltips, and it's displaying, as I said, EuroSI, SI, and field units. You can switch them off if you like, or you can choose user-defined unit set, and then you get to pick two different sets of units that you would like. So this is an alphabetical list. Unfortunately, it's not one where we can type to make it jump to that letter. So if I type P, for example, it's not going to let me jump down to P. In fact, it's looking to change that unit there for the acidity. So we can use a trick here where if we right click on the list and choose find row, a small window appears and we can now type. So if I start to type PRES there for pressure, I can pick the pressure in the list and it will make the main table jump to the pressure. So let's do that. Okay, so you can see it's jumped to pressure. So if I want my first unit set, instead of bar, to use, let's say, let's say, I don't know, millimeters of mercury at 0C. So we've got that set. If we now hover over the pressure again, we see that it's using the millimeters of mercury unit there. Okay, let's just put that back to the default. Now let's come back to the tooltip and consider here the variable type. So the variable type is telling us which unit we need to think about when we're working in the preferences. We've already seen that for the tooltip, but typically the main time you'd be using that would be on the variables tab and then the units page, and this is setting the units that UniSim Design is using throughout the interface. So what happens is that internally UniSim Design does its calculations in internal units, and then whenever it needs to display a value to the user, it converts them into the display units. So here we see that I currently have 4 sets of units called the unit sets here, and these define for all the different variable types what unit UniSim Design is going to use. So I have actually the 3 standard ones, Euro, SI, Field and SI. Currently it's using SI, and I have another one called OG Demo. So what happens when I switch between these by clicking on them is that the units UniSim Design is using will change. So now it's changed to pressures in bar. If I pick field, I get field units with PSIA pressures. So the 3 standard ones, Euro, SI, Field and SI, I can't change them. Any customized ones I can change. So here OG Demo is a customized unit set that I'm using for this model. So I'm just going to make a new unit set so I can change it as I wish. So let's go start from OG Demo, and we'll clone that to a new unit set, which comes in being called new user. So if I want to go to the pressure again, let's switch here. So I right click, choose find row, go to pressure. Okay, so because I've derived this from the OG demo set, it's using bar G as the pressure unit. And I can change to any other pressure units that I would like by clicking in the box. I can now type in this list directly, so I could change to atmospheric units or atmosphere units. I could go back to the bar gauge pressure units, so they would be at the bottom, bar underscore G. Now, over here on the right-hand side of the preferences window, we have the atmospheric pressure that's used when it's doing these gauge pressure calculations. So here it's got the standard atmospheric pressure. If I wanted to change that, let's suppose the atmospheric pressure was a little higher, let's say it's 1.1 bar. If we keep an eye on the pressure showing there in the bar gauge units, it changes. It was 19 and now it's 18.91. So I can set the atmospheric pressure that it uses in these gauge calculations. There are some other interesting things on this page as well. First of all, up here we can look and we see something called the preferred unit set. So what happens with the preferred unit set is I can specify which unit set I would prefer that gets used with my case. So what will happen is if I choose the preferred unit set and I put it onto OG demo, then what will happen is if someone else, or if I load the case at a later point and I'm not using the OG demo unit set, or whoever else is loading the case is not using that, then they get a warning message to tell them that the person who set up the case would prefer them to be using the OG demo set. So we can show that now. So let's just do a quick save of my case. File, save. I'm going to close my case, and I'm going to make sure that my preferences is set to use a different unit to OG demo. So let's put it to Euro SI now. So this is the unit set that it's going to use anytime it needs it. So at the moment it's not, because there's no case open. If I reload my example case, that comes in. Just okay that. Now we see down here there's a message in the status list that's giving me an indication there. So it's telling me that the current unit set Euro SI is differing from the preferred unit set OG demo. So if I open that by double clicking on it, In fact, I can just change it straight away from this little pop-up window that appears. By hitting OK, it will switch to the preferred unit set again, so the OG demo unit set. Another quick thing to explain here is the concept of the default set. So you see at the moment we're using the OG demo set because that's selected, but there's another set, SI, showing in the list with default next to it. So the default set is the one that gets used when you open UniSim Design. So if I was to close and reopen, then it would switch to the default set. If you want to change the default set, you can do that by right-clicking and choosing Set as Default Unit Set. So that's the difference between the current set and the default set. Currently, we're using the one that's selected. When UniSim Design is opened, it uses the default set, and that's the one showing there with the brackets, the default in brackets. Okay, and the final thing to note over here is that we see an explicit list of all the unit sets that get saved inside the case. So sometimes if you, for example, in a spreadsheet, if your spreadsheet is using a given unit set, then UniSim Design knows that it's going to have to save that unit set inside the case. And over here we can see exactly the unit sets that are being saved inside our case. So here we have the OG demo set being used. And we can see exactly who's using that if we select the set and press the View Users button. So it tells me in this case there's lots of spreadsheets that are using that OG demo set, so that's why it's being included inside my case when I save it. And another enhancement that's been made here is this button or this checkbox here where it says preserve unit sets loaded from cases in the preferences. So a legacy behavior here of UniSim Design was that every time you opened a case and it had some unit sets embedded in it, as we can see here, that we were just saying the OG demo sets saved inside the case. What would happen is if you loaded a case that had these unit sets inside it, they would come in to the list of available unit sets and they would stay there even if you then finished with the case and closed it. So that was the default behavior, that anytime you loaded a case that had unit sets inside it, they came into your list and they stayed there. That's still the default, but if you would prefer, you can untick this preserve unit sets checkbox, and that means that the unit sets only come into the list while they're needed. If you were then to close the case, nothing else was using them, then they disappear from the list. So it can keep your list of unit sets much tidier. So I've summarized some of those things we saw about the preferences here. So we saw how to change the units shown on the tooltips via the simulation tooltips page in the preferences. We saw quite a few things about the setting the unit set the UniSim Design is using on the variables tab units page, including changing the atmospheric pressure used for gauge calculations and the preferred unit set. It's also useful to note that the standard conditions in UniSim Design are customizable as well, and that's on the simulation tab and basis options page. The default setting is the way it's been done in the legacy versions of the program. So it has a temperature which depends, the standard temperature depends on whether we've got field units, in which case it's 60F or otherwise 15C, and the pressure is always 1 atmosphere. If we change from default to user specified, then we get the chance to set exactly which temperature and pressure to use for those standard conditions. We also saw a useful way of dealing with long lists where you can't directly type in them to jump to the value you want. Instead, if you right click, you see either find row or find column, or sometimes find row and find column, depending on the type of list. Choose the one you would like. A window appears, you can start to type there, OK, the one you want, and then the main list will jump to that value. So we can use this on the workbook. We can use it in the stream property page, the display units as we saw it, also compositions on the stream. It's particularly useful. Now let's look at UniSim Design spreadsheets. The UniSim Design spreadsheet has seen many enhancements that make it more intuitive to use. For example, you can use range formula. If you need to sum over a range of cells, you can use a standard kind of sum function and then define the range by the top and bottom cells. When you're writing the formula, you can click in the cells to help you write the formula. Once you have formula in your spreadsheet, you can copy paste them and then they update in an intelligent way as you'd expect. Dollar signs make an absolute reference in the standard kind of way. If you need to modify the spreadsheet by inserting or deleting rows and columns, then that's possible as well, just by right clicking and choosing inserting or deleting. Everything else updates automatically. One of the major benefits of the UniSim design spreadsheet is that it's embedded in the model, and you can easily import any values from anywhere in your simulation directly into the spreadsheet to make use of them in calculations. Similarly, once you've done a calculation, you can make an export of the calculated value to any place in the simulation. The easiest way of making these imports and exports is by right-clicking, dragging and dropping the values into the simulation, and I'll demonstrate that shortly in my demo case. Actually, there's an exception to that. It's easier to use a different way of making the import when you're working with compositions, and I'll demonstrate this too. And also a quick tip for how you can easily get the component names to use as labels in your spreadsheet. First of all, let's just work with a simple spreadsheet. So we'll add a fresh spreadsheet to our fresh case, open it up, have a look on the spreadsheet tab and just have a few numbers to work with. So if we want to add up these numbers, then we can use the sum function. It's much more convenient, particularly if we have more numbers than this. So to do that, we would type equals and then sum. We can click in the top cell, colon, and then click in the bottom cell and just finish the function like that, and then we get our sum. Now maybe we need to add another number into our list that we've forgotten, so we can right click to do that and choose to insert a row, put in our extra number, and we can see that our sum function recalculates straight away. Maybe we need to add another column, we need to put some labels in here, so we can right click to do that, choose insert, and then we could put our labels in these cells like that. Now let's suppose we want to multiply all of these values by a constant. So let's put our constant in here. Let's say it's going to be 20. And then we're going to, in column D, we're going to multiply all of those values by the constant. So just as we would in Excel, we can construct the formula times by the constant. And because we want that to be a constant and not to update when we're copy pasting our formula, we can use dollar signs as we would expect. Now we've got that formula written like that, we can copy that to another cell or to a range of cells, and it automatically updates, including the reference to the constant cell. So returning to the demo model, I'm going to show a quick way of importing a whole set of composition values into the spreadsheet, and I'm going to contrast that to the normal way of working with single value imports and exports. So we're going to add a new spreadsheet into the model. So just by adding it from the object palette in the standard way, open up the spreadsheet, and in fact the easiest way of working is to go straight to the spreadsheet tab, and then we can just make imports and exports from single values by dragging and dropping. So let's suppose we want to get the temperature here of feed 1 and import that into my spreadsheet. I just hold down the right click and drag and drop into any cell I like on the spreadsheet. Same I can do for calculated values as well. So let's suppose here over in feed fuel gas 1, if I want the mass flow, I can right click, drag and drop anywhere in the spreadsheet. So here I am making imports from these values. So if I import a specification, it's free for me to change. I can do that just typing a new value. If I import a calculated value, then obviously it updates automatically as the flow sheet solves. So single values, the easiest way is by this right click dragging and dropping method. Let's suppose we want to import the calculated compositions from this fuel gas 1 stream. We could drag and drop the individual values as before, but actually there's an easier way of doing it. We can do it all in one go. So the way we do that is not by working on the spreadsheet tab, but instead going to the connections tab. So let's suppose I want to have my compositions coming in and I want them to start from cell B5. 5. So I would come to my Connections tab, and I would choose to make a new import with the Add Import button. I choose my top cell, which is going to be B5, as I just decided. OK that. And now I get my variable navigator window. So I need to find the stream I want to import from, which is fuel gas 1. And the variable I want to work with will be the composition. So let's have the component mole fraction. And importantly here, when I get to pick my variable, now I can pick more than one at a time. So if I would like all of them, I can click at the top, shift and click at the bottom, and add them all in one go. So we'll OK that, and they've now all been brought in one go. Actually, what's also happened is that the spreadsheet has automatically increased the number of rows to make room for all these imported compositions. So there they all are in one go. It would be nice if we could also list out the component names next door to them. So actually, there's a quick trick I can use to do that. So the way to do that is to select all of the compositions, right click and choose copy special. So copy special lets me do various kind of things to do with what data gets copied to the clipboard. So you can copy values or copy formulas if there were some in your spreadsheet. So actually the one I need to pick is the bottom one, which is offset labels. So when you have a set of compositions, the offset label is the component name. So if I pick offset labels and OK, now if I paste in the cells next door, starting in A5, I can do Control V, the standard pasting shortcut, and now my component names appear there in my spreadsheet. So that's a quick way of getting an import of compositions and the matching component names. So we've reached the end of the webinar. Thanks very much for your attention. Before we go, just a reminder of a couple of useful entries on our online knowledge base. An index of all the videos in the technical webinar series, and also an index of all the videos in our How Do I series, which are shorter videos covering commonly asked questions. So in order to use those indexes, you can either follow the hyperlink or you can go to the support website and search for the article number. But importantly, before you do either of those things, you must first go to the website and log in at the top right hand corner. So if you already have a login, you can do that now, either following the link or searching for the article number once you've logged in. If you don't yet have a login, then you can follow the steps here. So you can visit the website and search for the article number there, 92371, and that gives help on registering. Also there is the email address for the UniSim Design Tech Support team, so that's unisim.support@honeywell.com. And thanks again for your attention.